Hello and welcome back to Spirit Mom. Today at Spirit School, we're going to discuss mindfulness and being in the now. I mention it all the time, and I mention how we need to get downloads. This channel is all about your ascension and healing the self so you can ascend. That means awakening more, embodying more of the energetic and etheric realms, being more in this human form as well. There is so much that goes into it, most of it around healing, because the more you heal, the more you can receive downloads. And downloads is those universal information, just that God knowing that it's hard to explain from one person to another. You can't teach it. They're concepts. They're pictures, like how they think above us. It's not from the human world, but at the same time, it will help you understand this human world better in just a sense of wisdom and knowing. As you go through your life dealing with everyday tasks, you'll just know how to handle it more because of the downloads you're getting. You'll get pings and senses of the things that you should stop or quit, as well as pings and senses of the things you should pick up. And they come in these downloads. And sometimes you get them and you don't even realize it, but most of the time, a lot of the time, you'll get them in that sense of like, like this, it's like an orb, a happiness orb. They can come and be huge or just a little bloop, which could just be like a little bubble popping of a something. Again, it's hard to just explain in human language. But what we do understand and what we do know is that they are something you want to have. They're very important for your personal ascension, because I can help you heal and I can help you know about the outside stuff in a very intellectual way, but actually being in the spiritual world, experiencing the spiritual world, feeling the spiritual world, that's your own responsibility. That is something that only you can achieve with the downloads, the channeled information, the important sense of just I know. So how do we get them? We talk a lot about just meditation because that's one way, but if we're looking for easier day-to-day ways to bring about, if maybe even about a certain situation, we stay in the now. Eckhart Tolle's the now, which has been talked about in other religions, and before him, he just really brought it home there, of finding a way to stay in the moment. And then there's a meditation that comes from a Rosicrucian practice, which is pick something, honestly, really anything, stare at it. Let's say I'm gonna stare at that, but I'm looking at it here. You breathe in the perception of that white birch. Breathe in the perception, your perception, and breathe out the concept. Because that's what the higher beings give you. They give you concepts. So it's sacred geometry where one shape becomes a bunch of different shapes. Like how the pentagram becomes like the Merkaba as you go into higher dimensions. It's just an example, but that's what the concepts are like. They come in this sense where you see it with pictures and just senses of knowing, and you just, maybe you don't even see it at that time, but you'll feel more. This is why we make space with healing. This is why we have to get rid of old subconscious behavior and things that get in our way, like bad food, making our bodies bad and our minds bad. Because once we get those downloads and there's space, they can go, they can take seed inside us, and they could expand our entire being. It's probably the whole point of humanity. It is that process that is making us fourth, fifth dimensional. That is, in its essence, like the higher realms just pumping, like an air pump into a tire. Each download is one pump, as you see the tire getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But you can't bring down the pump if there's things in the way. So that is our healing, which we talk a lot about, ancestral healing, but I would more focus just on your own healing, because your own healing will automatically heal the ancestral healing, because that's why something might have happened in your life, because it was the ancestral thing. So just work on your healing, on your triggers. Stay conscious. If you want to be able to find your triggers, then when it happens, don't let yourself get into that automatic behavior. Instead, stay centered, stay in the now, and just be like, to yourself, And now just maybe let that person keep talking, or let that situation keep unfolding, and wait in that pain spot for the answer to come, because sometimes it won't, and then you dissolve the pain, which we've talked about before, but sometimes it will, like, oh wow, this is because insert past trauma or fear, because sometimes we have fears and we don't even know why. It could be ancestral, it could be buried, or it could be just like an old survival human thing of fears. And a lot of us have fears of losing control. A lot of things come down to shame. We've talked before about shame and guilt being two big things. If you look into your fears, especially fears of failure, fears of putting yourself too out there, they come down to shame. Because when you so we're in that perceiving space, and the contemplation often can be shame in the negative sense. Like when we open up a negative thing, you'll find a lot of things equal shame. Even guilt is shame. So when we feel shame, there's no need to even heal it. Once we know it's shame, it can just go away, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is an experience that we're going to fail at sometimes. And if you're picking yourself back up and continuing to try, there's nothing to be ashamed about. And even if you're not, being ashamed isn't going to help anybody, So that's something that you can just, if you ever find that when you're in a moment and you're backing off and backing off and backing off from the anger trigger to the fear trigger, and now you'll get down to shame more often than not, and just let that go. Shame doesn't help anything, because fear of I'm going to die is different than of being embarrassed, right? So when we pull it back to an I'm going to die space, we can also be like, yo, it's 2022, probably not going to die from this, like probably going to be okay. And we can just relax and be in the now until the next little blip happens. But then we stay conscious, we realize what that trigger is, and we go throughout our day like this, in the now, finding the spots, and simultaneously taking moments for perceptive breathing meditation. It's really quick, but as you're making space with the trigger finding, then you have moments to let in. Like, now I'm going to look at the gold painting. Breathe in the perception. Feel the concept come in as a download, like in that crown chakra space. Feel it come down, and it can even go through the third eye, and then through that third pillar, feel it travel all the way down to your root, because we're a torus of energy, in and out, and then the bottom, in and out. It goes at the same time, so we can bring it all the way down. We could ground it. Imagine it going all the way to the earth as being part of our permanent being now. This is what we're doing with the good concepts, with our downloads that we're getting, even if we don't know what they're about now. We can begin to energetically feel them, and they'll unfold throughout our lives as we talk to Aunt Jessie and realize that you have an insight about her daughter that she's been complaining about, and you can say it in a perfect way that's not judgy or going to make her worry too much, just in a, maybe Sally just needs, and insert what the download is. Like, you'll get these sense of knowing, these comforting pushes and nudges that are very subtle, but as we empty out our traumas, we can hear subtle things better. We can feel the gentle nuances of the universe pulling us this way and that. Once we're quieting the noise inside, once we stay in the now. And being in the now helps both things. It's helping make space and helping you bring in new information. And the great thing about new information that you pull specifically from the universe, I mean specifically from the universe, so higher realms here. When you pull that down, it's not just filling up the space with old cardboard boxes, it's expanding energy. And I know you might ask, well, why do we need to make space? It's the law of action. You need to do one for the other to come, and we get bigger, and we get bigger, and we get bigger. So this is worth doing, people. I believe in you. I know you can do it. Goodbye for now, Spirit Mom.